All right, we are beginning with a card. So I've taped down here a watercolor card. It looks like this. So it has a watercolor paper surface, it's perforated, and I can use it as a card as soon as I'm done painting on it. But I've taped it down so it doesn't flip open while I'm working on it. Today we're going to do an easy design with some leaves on our paper. So we're going to start with the watercolor, and then I'll show you how to add some pen to it as well. To do these leaf designs, I'm going to start with a round brush, but it will need a pointy tip. So I'm going to use this one here, and I'm going to make my leaf shapes with this brush with just water. First, I'm going to give it a stem to attach all my leaves to. So I'm using just plain water. I'm making a kind of wiggly line, and then here is the first leaf. I'm pressing down and pulling up to make a pointy tip at the end of the leaf. Press down and lift up. That one swift motion makes a really easy, wide, and then narrow leaf. You might not believe me right now because it's really hard to see. It's just water. So I'm going ahead and adding some green. And I'm going to copy that same kind of shape and drop the green paint inside of those leaf areas. I'm actually just using the green that's left over in my paint palette. That's one of my favorite things to do, is because it's already mixed, it already has multiple colors in it, and it really helps my art look more natural because it has different tones of greens and browns and things that I've mixed for other projects. Now that I have my main green color, I'm going to go back and add some lights and darks to the areas of my leaf that does not have color yet. Because I added water to begin with, I can drip in different lights and darks of green, and they will mix together. There is no right way to do this. You just have fun with it, drop it in, let it blend. You can guide it a little bit, or just let it do what it wants. The main thing to do is allow different types of greens to all hang out while the paper is still wet. When watercolor is wet, it's going to move and blend more easily with each color that's inside the same wet area. Same with the stem, or that long piece down the center. Make sure that you are adding colors to that while it's wet so that your leaves stay attached to that stem. Going back and forth and kind of mixing those different colors into the stem, especially those darks, making sure they all attach. It can be helpful to pick a side of the leaves that will all be a little bit dark or all be a little bit light. That will create a more 3D effect or a shadow. So maybe on the bottom left of each of my leaves, I will create a darker area of green. But again, this is really not necessary. This painting activity today is really just having fun with green colors and not worrying too much about how realistic it looks. We'll go back on at the end and add some pen lines to create a more interesting design on the surface as well. Now that I have my basic leaf shape created, I'm just using my blow dryer to speed up the drying process. You do not have to do this. You can go get a cup of tea, go drink your coffee. You can have your husband sneak in his thumbs up and approve your drawing, or just let it dry naturally. Thank you, Zach. All right. So now that it is dry, I'm actually going to go add a few more details on top with some more greens. Once you have a dry surface, any color you add on top will have a hard edge to it. So in this case, I'm going to go and add just a few other layers. With watercolor, you always start with the lightest color and you layer on dark, and that changes the variation. So kind of to the edges of my leaves, I'm adding a harder edge, and I kind of missed having some highlights. So you'll notice I'm actually drawing a line on the outside of the leaf shape, which is leaving a gap of white next to the leaf, which is acting like a highlight. So I am recreating that shape of the leaf on the outside and just leaving some paper empty so that I really get that lightest color. There really isn't white paint unless you use some white gouache, which we can use, but I like to most often keep the paper white if I can, so those I just kind of left open. Once again, I need to dry that then, because before I use pen, I have to make sure my paper is completely dry, or that pen ink will bleed when I definitely don't want it to. Okay, that was a very stubborn puddle of water that I now have dry. For pen, I am using a micron pen. It is a permanent felt tip marker that will not bleed if I had to go back on top and add more watercolor. You can choose any size. I believe I'm going to be using a 0.1 or 0.2 today. Those are a good small, but not too small sort of size. I'm going to start by kind of retracing some of my leaf shapes. However, I'm not going to be exact about it. I'm going to kind of go for an illustrative style, kind of loose. So I'm following that shape, but I'm not worrying about being perfect. I'm just kind of going around it, maybe on it, maybe next to it. Same with that stem. I'm going on either side of it because I do want it to have both edges. Same with the leaves all the way around it. But here I even added kind of an extra line on the side, just kind of highlighting that empty spot I left behind so that I can make sure to see that in my final design. When you're drawing the leaves, make sure you keep that point at the end of it and that wider area in the center. That's the really important kind of leaf shape. You could add a line down the center with some little veins if you want to add that sort of leaf design. I think I'll do a few of those as well, just to make the center of my leaf look a little bit more real, or at least leaf recognizable. Then after I finish designs on the leaves I actually painted, this next part is, well, optional. You can just stop here if you like the look of the paint with the leaves, but I'm going to start to add some more line designs where I don't have paint. I am placing leaves kind of in between each of my painted leaves, and I'm trying to make it random. So they're not all evenly spaced, but some are overlapping, some are in front, some are behind, and I'm adding that veining shape. I really love the contrast of the paint with the black and white line drawing. So that's why I've added these extra leaves with my pen, because then I get to see both the watercolor painted leaf and the pen drawn leaf. But you definitely don't have to do that step. If you're more comfortable with the painting part, you can skip those last little line design leaves. Just something fun I wanted to try. Then, of course, when you're done painting something, you always get to take the tape off. I will warn you, no matter how good your paper is, no matter how good your tape is, you'll probably tear a little bit of the paper, and that is no big deal. I did not realize that that was normal for the longest time. Just kind of rub it back down to get rid of any rough edges, and it's totally fine. Here I have my leaf card. I could add some writing if I wanted to. I could turn it into a thank you card on the outside, or I could just save it for when I need to write someone a nice message on the inside. And then this paper I bought came with envelopes as well. I hope you had fun.